Go for it.
Good evening, everybody. I'd just like to call to order our meeting. Welcome everybody here. Our treasurer is not here this evening. She's out of town, so I just wanted to provide just a real quick financial update. So as of yesterday evening, our bank account balance was slightly over $11,000, so we're in good shape there financially. We don't really have a whole lot of money going out right now, so we're able to maintain a good balance. Hopefully we're going to continue to grow that bank account so we can get back to the community. So I'm going to turn the next half of the meeting over to Chris.
So that was the first half?
That was like 1/3 of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Ryan wanted me to talk about how the courts are doing reopenings with coming back from coronavirus. Talk to the camera? Or? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just talk to us.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So when COVID just started, what the Supreme Court of the state of Georgia did is they suspended a couple of rights. They said that you can't have jury trials. You can't really hold open court. And also there's a couple of very specific rights that they limited, like there's a statute that says after 90 days, if you don't have an indictment, you are guaranteed to a bond. But with coronavirus, they suspended that. So many people have been sitting in jail without bonds and without an indictment, without their charges, without any of the evidence that's being held against them for months and months and months. So that is actually coming back hopefully this month. So that's going to be one big step. The speedy trial right, that was also suspended. There's no word on when that's coming back. Grand jury and jury trials are coming back county by county basis. So they're warming up, but there's still a huge backlog in all the cases. As far as how that directly relates to the marijuana laws, we've got three big categories I could kind of loop them into. We've got the harm reduction ordinances, that's like your $75 tickets. That was largely unaffected by coronavirus. There was a slight backlog in that, but you can pay those tickets. And I think that's an excellent selling point for expanding the harm reduction ordinances, is being able to go to counties, go to cities and say, these harm reduction ordinances have no backlog, they're clearing out cases. And it's reducing the harm for all the other reasons, but this is just a nice little cherry on top for right now. The misdemeanors, that's anything under an ounce of simple possession of marijuana. That's what most of the folks who typically get arrested for pot have, is misdemeanor marijuana. And I think largely that's going to be unaffected unless we can get large groups of people to want to say, hey, I'm demanding a jury trial. But even then, because jury trials are coming back county by county, you don't have speedy trial rights, the DAs, the prosecutors, they're really in control of how fast cases come back. And with those misdemeanor cases, even though there's a huge backlog, they can deal with that at this point. The felony cases, that's where things are going to get interesting. That's everything over an ounce, plus sale, distribution, and then also your medical oils. Anything that is not just 100% plant matter could fall into an immediate felony. It's a Schedule I felony in most cases. And that's going to be where they're competing for court time with serious crimes, with murders, robberies, rapes. They're dealing with side by side with some serious bad crimes. And that's where we're going to start to see more aggressive plea offers from the DA's offices. I don't think any DA is going to admit that because they don't want to admit that they're falling behind, and they don't want to admit that they don't want to deal with even felony marijuana amounts. So that's where I think that we can push the advantage on it. And then once the actual speedy trial rights come back, that's where we can take the offense on the defenses of these. Other developments, medical oils, vapes. The common scenario I see is high school kids go to Florida and come back with vape cartridges, and then they get picked up for felonies. And that's not good, but it's happening all the time. It's something we should be aware of. Also, prosecutors are getting more savvy with DUIs. They think that just because your blood has some amount of THC, it's in nanograms over milliliters, that you are automatically DUI, and they're going to charge you with a DUI, and they're going to prosecute you for a DUI just because you have some residual THC in your system. The blood tests are inconclusive. There's been no study that I've seen that shows that any specific amount of THC, even active THC, not just the metabolites, are can relate to actual intoxication at the time. They'll also run you through, even if your car just smells like pot, even if they're just suspecting marijuana, they'll run you through the standardized field sobriety tests, which are designed for alcohol. The standardized field sobriety tests they use here in Georgia are correlated to specific blood alcohol content, and they're going to run you through those and say that that means that you're intoxicated on marijuana. So, yeah, courts are opening back up, prosecutors are getting savvy, but we got a couple opportunities. Question?
The right to a speedy trial, I think they extended that recently. That was like one of the two things that kept in its emergency declaration or whatever. But are there any lawsuits around that? Like, it seems like people would have a good case in that it would probably piss off a significant amount of people, and people would have a good case against it. Is that
I don't know of any specific cases right now, but that's going to be one that I'm sure the ACLU is going to be having a big backlash on it in like 4 years. But yeah, that's the problem with those civil rights claims and also with appellate rights claims is you kind of have to lose first.
Yeah.
So as for right now, we don't have much with teeth that I see. If there's more information, if there's someone actually going at it, let me know, because I've got 100 clients who want to know about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why I figured you might know if there was one.
No, I don't know anything about it yet, but I'm sure in the next 5 years, the COVID litigation, especially on the criminal side, is going to be huge.
Yeah.
How backlogged do you think they are?
14 months of cases. They've been trying to clear some out. They've been seeing some pretty aggressive offers, seeing a lot of really good pleas coming down the lines. But yeah, that's an entire year that they were backed up. And if anyone has
You
experienced,
got to be prioritizing, level of case.
yeah. So
Or,
we're seeing the big ones. We're seeing a lot more murder trials, aggravated assault trials are going to be the ones fresh out the door. People who are in custody, they tend to still have priority. But with statute of limitations for marijuana for a misdemeanor is 2 years, for your felonies is 4 years, and the prosecutors like to use every bit of that time to indict or accuse the case. And once the case is indicted or accused, then there's no real time limit.
We're sitting at 24 months right now.
Yeah, and
Just getting discovery.
yeah, so they've already accused the case. Unless there's any backlogs that the prosecution is causing, you have any reason to believe that the prosecution is deliberately delaying your case, you wouldn't even have a constitutional speedy trial. Because you got 2 layers of the speedy trial right. You've got your U.S. Constitution speedy trial right, and then you've got Georgia statutory speedy trial right. And the Georgia statutory speedy trial is your, that's constitutional speedy trial, and then your statute of limitations. The statute of limitations is state by state. The constitutional speedy trial right.
It's not county by county.
Oh no, state by
Okay, state by state.
Yeah, but the constitutional it varies. Rule of thumb is typically about 4 years, but you're not bringing it up early enough, and it's difficult to work with.
And then the cartridge thing, how are they field testing those?
I don't know if they are field testing them. For the most part,
They waiting for the oil to go into a snap bag and
No, from what I'm told, as far as like the cartridges goes, that they are seizing the item, that they are sending it off for testing, and then you'll be indicted after the fact. So you may not be arrested tonight on for possession, but then you're going to be advised as the testing proceeds, how your case will proceed. So
But I don't think anybody's doing testing.
right now, the GBI crime line is backed up tremendously, so the priority is not,
One cartridge going to the GBI.
yeah, that's not their priority.
Get out of here.
I think a lot of those cases are gonna go by myself, we can talk about it.
and they can look at packaging to determine if there's like a probability, because that's a probable cause standard for arrest. It's whether there's a probability the crime was committed. So looking at how it's packaged, how it smells, if the officer in their experience and training believe that there's a probability that that cartridge contains THC, then they can arrest you that day for it. As for the indictment and the accusation, that's typically they wait for the FBI for that.
Now, you know what's really stupid about that is if you ask a lot of our legislators, why is the smokable hemp flower illegal, they will tell you because you not currently have field tests to differentiate it from marijuana. That's like a big reason. And I'm like, okay, cool, you still black that. But this basically speaks to the fact to laugh, it's clearly happening, be indicted later, I mean, so that is obviously
Yeah, and the
such
police,
a false line of reasoning.
and the police, they're gonna arrest you first and then double check themselves for GBI. So like I could go to a CBD store and get one of those, the hemp flower joint things. It looks just like a joint, it smells like a joint. You smoke it, you don't get high. But if an officer catches me with that, they're going to arrest first and ask questions later.
And see, that's the stupid thing is, I mean, even though it is technically illegal, I mean, every person is being and selling it, so it's, I mean, it's not even like an effective prohibition. It's even less effective than like other cannabis prohibition. It's like literally in stores, so extra price.
The state is charging people tens of thousands of dollars for hemp grower licenses
Yes.
without knowing how to differentiate from things they've decided are illegal.
You'd be surprised some of the ways that they think pollination changes things apparently overnight. The one bee can make everything weed overnight.
That was
I've
one
heard
thing
this.
a state senator said in the Senate Ag Committee meeting.
Who is a farmer?
In 19,
Yes.
that was wild. I couldn't believe that.
Bringing that one in. Yeah, that's update on the legend, or on the court system side of things.
Thanks, Chris, that was terribly depressing.
Yeah, no, prohibition is alive and well in Georgia, and yeah, we are like way far behind.
Laura's gonna follow this and give you the.
For the next half of the meeting.
Is that right?
Oh,
For the next.
The third half.
The third.
Third half of the meeting, I want to do a messaging update. First, thank you to Adam for being our I Am Normal showcase last month.
Yeah.
So if you haven't had your picture taken with the I Am Normal sign and given your little quote about why you think prohibition should end, it does not have to be that you use or why you use or whatever, but why prohibition should end. If you haven't done that yet, let me know. You can do it tonight.
Yes.
We are gathering those images. They are also starting to come back. We got our first $100 check for merch. So it's a slow start, but it's passive revenue that's coming to us without us having to do too much. So people are buying I Am Normal merch also. I wanted to talk about dysphomism. I'm supposed to give an update on messaging, and did you want to talk about Gwinnett first? No.
No.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about dysphomism as a way of bringing people's attention to things they don't usually think about. You've probably heard of euphemism. So what's a euphemism?
Heard of it.
Euphemism is a nice word for something we don't like to talk about. So when we say someone passed away, that's a euphemism for dying, right? Dysphomism goes the other way. When we say dirt nap for dying, right, that's the worst way you can think of to say it. So how do we use these in our messaging around cannabis? We say no one should be caged for a plant, right? We mean imprisoned for possession. But caged for a plant gets the point across faster. Cash bail is another one that this has come up for. The ACLU has decided on pretrial detention, which I think is still quite weak, requires too much thought, right? But we're looking for more of the ways to do this. Policing for profit is a new favorite of Ryan's.
It is.
We will be using.
Glad you like policing for profit so much.
Highwaymen are gonna highwaymen.
Yeah, highwaymen, that's good, right? We've been talking about court fees as tributes to kidnappers that you're required to pay. But I am hoping we can come up with some for probation and for mandatory minimums. That is something we'll be talking about more over the next few months as we try to remove all the criminal penalties, because as you know, just because someone doesn't ultimately serve jail time doesn't mean that they won't be arrested and jailed while waiting to find out that they did not commit that crime.
Say things like the 13th Amendment recreated slavery.
Right? Good. Yes.
Well,
The-
basically, it's not,
probation.
Is what?
For prohibition, or probation is not inhibition. So you're gonna have to think outside that box, because you hear that a lot where, incarceration and probation is so much for criminal justice system. They're not innovative ideas. They're old, they're antiquated, they're dated. So we need to remove ourselves from that mentality.
I like that. Can we come up with something that
Well, that's why I
it
threw
is
out
instead of something
slavery.
that it's not?
It's bringing the jails in your home.
Modern slavery.
Ah, jailing you in your home. That's
See,
good.
I was just thinking about, so sleep and insomnia. So I was thinking like, are you trying to take my sleep away from me, or something like they're trying to, like,
I think probation, you can say you're kind of like paying for Big Brother. You're paying to be spied on.
Unfortunately, we're paying quite a bit for that at the federal level anyway. We're buying Big Brother. That's good.
It's kind of like virtual school, virtual learning, virtual prison.
That's what the judges say is probation is a prison term that you're serving outside of jail.
Once we were looking up the stats for Gwinnett County, we found for at least Georgia that half of new prison sentences start because of a probation violation.
There's a euphemism from the judges is the quickest way to prison is through probation.
Can we get someone on the
Say that
record?
again. Say that again. The quickest way to prison is through probation. Yeah, so you let them out, you let them on enough rope to hang themselves.
And we have at least,
Swaps that's huge. I mean, when you're in the prison system, like, that's what you hear. A quarter of these guys violated probation. Violated probation. Why are you in here? Violated probation.
I mean, I guess you can continue on the for-profit prisons, just in general, harp on that. That's what you want to buy.
come in, friend, are you looking for normal?
No, I'm lost. Thank you.
Well, come listen to normal.
What's the pressure about for-profit prisons?
So we'll use that to transition to Ryan's insights on probation as it relates to the Gwinnett County Harm Reduction Ordinance.
Yes.
If you have great ideas for dysphemism or other messaging points, you have one more, tell me.
probation or starvation?
That's it.
Sometimes it boils down to that for the probation.
Right?
Yeah.
You pay your probation fines and fees, or buy food.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the big things, and what Laura was talking about, kind of segue into it. I wanted to provide an update about what we've been doing in April. We've actually been really busy for the month of April. Statistically, it is a busy month for us. And this past April was no exception. So we attended an event. Laura and I attended an event in Buckhead, and co-sponsored event ourselves and Normal Women of Georgia, and it was really structured as a meet and greet. So during the course of the night, I think we were there for maybe 5 or 6 hours. There's probably 100+ people that worked their way through that evening. So I got to meet some of the board members from Atlanta Normal. Obviously, the board members of Normal Women of Georgia were there. It was a rather eclectic group of people. I mean, there were college professors there were students, there were small business owners, there were people who were just interested to see what criminal justice reform or what we were about just in general. So got to talk to a lot of wonderful people, make some good contacts, and I think we're going to be able to develop those into working relationships, good relationships down the road. So we intend on holding at this particular event space in Buckhead, probably another 5 to 7 events throughout the year. So what we're going to end up doing out there is we're going to hold educational events. We're going to bring in farmers. We're going to bring in hemp farmers. We're going to bring in various people from the community that want to speak and learn a little bit more about what we do. We're going to gear some of these events towards children and families. So we're just going to try to break the stigma down of what normal is, what we do, and what we represent. And so I'm looking forward to being able to do that with our members and with the board over the next few months. So, again, we were busy with Gwinnett County. So we were approached by Commissioner of Gwinnett County. He's proposed a harm reduction ordinance within the county that would positively impact roughly 700,000 Gwinnettians. So like 72% of Gwinnett County could be positively impacted if this harm reduction ordinance passes. It's at the beginning stages right now, and so Laura typed up a wonderful letter that we were able to send out to the county chair and to the various commissioners. And I passed a copy of that letter out for you guys to read, just to kind of let you know that our core values haven't changed. When we are approached to work with a local government, our mission does not change regardless of who that particular body of government happens to be. So our mission doesn't waver, we doesn't change, our core values do not change. We're looking to end prohibition against cannabis in Georgia, period, like full stop. So one of the things that you're going to hear me talk a lot about anytime that I have the opportunity is incrementalism. So the harm reduction ordinance in Gwinnett County is a step in the right direction. It doesn't solve all of the problems in Gwinnett County when it comes to misdemeanor marijuana possession, but it is a step in the right direction. So what Dr. Williams was talking about, policing for profit, taxation through citation, things of that nature. You know, the state fine for misdemeanor marijuana possession is $1,000. So this harm reduction ordinance takes that down to $150. So if you have somebody who is, and it typically it happens to be this way, that if you have somebody that may be living at or below the poverty line, if you say, okay, that fine was $1,000 yesterday, today it's $150, and by the way, we're not going to take you to jail because you were going to be arrested before this harm reduction ordinance would potentially be enacted. So rather than going to jail, rather than be put on probation for 11 months, rather than facing $1,000+ fine, realistically it's about $1,500 with fine fees and surcharges, you know, being put on probation, paying probationary fees. That all goes by the wayside for these harm reduction ordinances, and you're going to hear us stress the need for these harm reduction ordinances in these local municipalities and counties throughout the state, because right now 90% of all Americans across the board support ending prohibition against cannabis in some form or another. So whether you talk about decriminalization, legalization, getting cannabis off of the Controlled Substance Act, whether it's through enacting harm reduction ordinance. So we have the support right now nationwide. Currently in Georgia, I think the numbers are about 67 to 69% of all Georgians who support ending prohibition against cannabis in some form or another. So the time is right. So I think we're in a good position to get our message out there and to press these harm reduction ordinances where they are needed. So if you look at some of the bigger counties throughout the state, like Gwinnett County, for example, if we can get something like this enacted, I mean, the positive impact it's going to have on 700,000 people and their families and their communities is going to be tremendous. And so we stress that to the commissioners in this letter. Laura typed up a wonderful message, and I just wanted to have you guys look over that. And that way you know that when we are working with these municipalities and with these county governments, our core values don't change. Who we are does not change. So if you look at that, one of the arguments that Dr. Williams made in the letter was, hey, this is a step in the right direction, but why are you adding community service? Because you're adding that probation criteria in there, and that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about in a minute. So even though the commissioner reached out to us for support of the ordinance, which we ultimately gave support, we said, hey, this is great, but you need to focus in on this as well. So I just want you to know that NORML, N-O-R-M-L, we are really focused in on reform. So when I was asked to come on board as the executive director and was ultimately voted in by the board, some of the meetings, private meetings that I had with our founding member and our outgoing executive director was, I'm going to press reform hard. Because we need it right now in Georgia. Criminal justice reform is where we're lacking, so I just really want to stress that. Not only to these county commissioners and city council members, but to our members as well. We also attended, I don't know if you guys know Aviva from Aviva and the Flying Penguins. She's wonderful, absolutely love her spirit. So she held an event in Hapeville recently. It was in April as well. So we went down there and we set up a table. We got to meet more people. We set up a vendor table down there. Actually had my son and his girlfriend come down to help, which was fantastic. He's getting involved as kind of following in Dad's footsteps in his advocacy work as well. My son just happens to be a former POW in the war on drugs, and so he's really focused in on advocacy work. So that was a wonderful opportunity to meet some other advocates who are out there fighting the good fight, and we got to network. And so I think that particular meeting is going to yield some positive fruit for us as well. We had several people reach out with private email addresses and phone numbers and wanted more information about what NORML does. So of course I was able to provide that, and I want them to become involved with our organization. One of the things that I really truly wanted to touch on, again, it comes back to reform. So for those of you who know me, I'm a self-proclaimed nerd. Like, I absolutely am. I'll sit down and read numbers and statistics all that night. So I pulled some statistics specifically across the country when it comes to probation reform, criminal justice reform, and as it relates back to us here in Georgia. So I'm just going to give you some statistics that I thought were a bit disheartening, if not downright sad. So every 4 minutes across the country, a probationer is sent back to prison for a technical violation. Every 4 minutes, a probationer across the country is sent back to prison for a technical violation. A technical violation does not equate to a new offense. Okay, I want to stress that. A technical violation could be a new offense, but 9 times out of 10, it doesn't equate to a new offense. A technical violation could be something as simple as failure to pay a fine, failure to report in to your probation officer on time, failure to hold employment or gain employment. Or, say for instance, you travel outside of the state without your probation officer's permission. They can send you back to prison. My philosophy on reform, or my philosophy specifically when it comes to probation and parole reform, is simple. Everyday life should not be treated like a crime. So just because you're on probation or parole doesn't mean your life stops. You should be able to proceed with your life because you're not physically incarcerated. You should be able to proceed with your life regardless. And so I'm a firm believer in second chances. So what that means, if every 4 minutes a probationer across the country is sent back to prison for a technical violation, that means on average there are 100,000 Americans sitting in jail currently who are not being charged with known crimes. 100,000 on a daily basis. Okay, that's scary. If you think about that, 100,000 people across the country are sitting in jail on a daily basis, and they haven't committed any crime. These technical violations are where we need to focus in on the reform, because that is what is sending Georgians and Americans back to prison. One of the statistics that I focus in a lot on is 1 in every 13 Georgians is on probation or parole. Okay, so look at how many people are in this room tonight. So that is the highest level of incarceration in America. Okay? 1 in every 13 Georgians is on probation or parole. So if you look around the room tonight, you could probably raise your hand and say, I have a family member, I have a friend, I know someone who is on probation or parole. Okay? That's how frightening it is in the state of Georgia right now. 1 in every 13. Highest incarceration rate in the nation is here in Georgia. One of the things that you want to, when we talk about reform for probation and parole, and one of the things that is statistically depressing is the unemployment rate is 5 times higher for someone who is formerly incarcerated versus the rest of the population. Okay, so if you look at Georgia, with 1 in every 13 Georgians is on probation or parole, and 5 times higher for formerly incarcerated people is unemployment. When one of the typical probation conditions is you have to have a job, right? Well, what do they violate before it sends you back to prison for? Because you can't find a job. Why can't you find a job? Because statistically, it's really hard to do that. Okay, so when you talk about reform, those are some of the things that we have to address.
Okay, so then are you personally, and I guess organizationally, in favor of laws that would ban the little check mark box
have you ever committed a crime, or are you under sentence?
Are you on the felony? Yeah, have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Convicted of a
Yeah,
crime.
that little box. And sometimes it's for a felony, sometimes it's
It's
for a
like more of a
crime.
misdemeanor or something like
The
this.
whole, there was a, yeah, the big push to ban the box.
Yes, push the ban box. So, if you're looking at it from a criminal justice reform standpoint, my personal opinion is that people deserve second chances, third chances, and fourth chances. Because I wouldn't be standing here before you if I wasn't given a second chance, a third chance, or a fourth chance. So I want to be able to afford that same opportunity to someone who's trying to get their life in order. You know, just because you committed a crime, because right now in Georgia, I mean, I'll just driving down the road, you commit crimes, right? Like, so they can pull you over from us. So I mean, that's what I'm looking at. If we're over criminalized in general, and you have those check marks on those boxes that are like, well, have you ever been convicted of a crime? Well, 1 in 13 people in Georgia could say, yes, I have. And so that directly relates back to that unemployment when you're trying to get people gainfully employed. And so I'll touch back on that in just 1 second because I've got a little short story to share that falls back in line with that. But me personally, unless you are convicted of a crime where there is an identified victim, I've committed an aggravated assault. I've committed a burglary. You know, something of that nature, to where I could potentially a danger to maybe to a fellow employee or to liability at work, maybe. But even there, I'm skeptical. Okay, so I'm going to come back to that in just 1 second because some more staggering statistics about nonviolent offenders being on probation and how many people on a daily basis in Georgia are nonviolent offenders on probation. So right now, more than 4.5 million Americans are on probation or parole. 4.5 million. 75% of those 4.5 million are there for non-violent offenses. Non-violent offenses, which is our bread and butter here at Peachtree NORML. Okay? So I want to repeat that again. 4.5 million Americans are on probation or parole. 75% of those 4.5 are there for non-violent offenses. We are over-criminalizing society, and we are caging Americans and Georgians where there is no identified victim. So we are prosecuting people where the only identified victim is a piece of paper, and the piece of paper are the laws of Georgia, right? The OCGA, you violated 1613 2B. Guess what we're going to do? We're gonna put you in a cage because that's the only identified victim is a piece of paper. It's not Ryan didn't victimize Chris, right? Ryan broke the law, and because Ryan broke the law and there's no identified victim, we're gonna put him in a cage. That's got to stop. I mean, bottom line, it's got to stop. Right now, there are roughly 200,000 Georgians are on felony probation. 200,000. Okay. And that's going to lead me to Senate Bill 105. If you guys haven't taken a look at Senate Bill 105, it is Georgia's version of criminal justice reform. Baby steps. Okay. So what it does is it allows a probationer or probationer to end their probation early. There are typically guidelines about how someone can end probation early. What this does, what Senate Bill 105 does, is it affords more criteria for someone who is on probation. And here's why I think that's amazing. So in Georgia, if you have 200,000 Georgians on felony probation right now, 25% of those 200,000 are eligible would benefit from Senate Bill 105, meaning that they meet the minimum criteria to terminate probation early. And that helps with the unemployment rate, that helps with overcrowding in prisons, overcrowding in jails, and monetarily, and I don't focus on that, but Senate Bill 105 could potentially save Georgia about $35 million because we're not housing that many Georgians in jail or in prison.
You need to follow to get.
So that criteria, or at least what I've read and what I've kind of delved into earlier, was that you cannot have a revocation within the past 2 years, which could be a technical violation, right? So we're focusing on those technical violations and not using that as an excuse to cage someone. And you have to not have reoffended. So during the court, so you have to pretty much abide by the rules, or you have no technical violations. And a technical violation could be a new charge or reoffense. So Georgia right now, when I said 1 in 13 Georgians is currently on probation or parole, another like really sad statistic about that is Georgia's average probationer was sentenced to 6.3 years. Okay, so 6.3 years of probation. The national average is 2 years. 2 years. That's still a bit hefty, but Georgia takes it up 1 or 2 or 3 notches and says, no, we're going to keep you on there for 6.5 years. Okay, so that's more time for them to fall back into the system. It's more time to get those technical violations, because I promise you the biggest technical violation, because I was part of this system for 17 years, is money. You don't pay your probation officer, they will send your butt to jail quicker than anything. And I'm not talking about if you don't pay them $500 or $600. I'm talking about if you're in arrears of like $50 to $100. They will send you to a probation detention center out near Carrollton, Georgia, just like that. Okay? So these are some of the things that we're focused in on in the R normal for reform. 40% of all probationers in Georgia are on probation for 10 years or more. 10 years or more. Okay? The national average is 2 years. Georgia says we're gonna keep you at about 6.5 years. However, 40% of all probationers in Georgia have a sentence of 10 years or more. So that's 10 years that you are paying probationary fees. That's 10 years where your probation officer has their thumb on you, has their foot on your neck. If you have never spoken to a probation officer, they lack common sense. Okay? And that kind of leads me back to what you asked me. So as a nonprofit, Peachtree NORML is a nonprofit, we can take probationers on and have them work with us to satisfy their requirement for so many hours of community service. I'm trying to take on a young man right now that I had a conversation with earlier today for about 30 or 40 minutes. He lives in North Georgia. He is being given the runaround by his probation officer. I've called the probation officer. She won't call me back. He is trying to do the right thing. He's driving sometimes 2 hours from his home to try to find somebody that will allow him to work so he can satisfy his community service hours. Whether it's like going to a humane society, going to a fire department, go to a police department. He's called all these people and they will not help him. Okay? This is a young man who is 20 years old, who's trying to do the right thing. He does not want to be another statistic. He does not want to be one of the things that I just talked about in this letter. He's genuinely trying to do the right thing. And I told him I'm going to do everything in my power to help him. If his probation officer does not allow him to work with us, I will find him someplace in North Georgia close to his house where he can serve his probation sentence for the community service hours. He owes 120 hours. He's required to do 20 hours a month. He did his first 20 hours online at a legitimate place specifically for probationers. His probation officer would not accept it. He almost received a technical violation and was sent back to prison. He did the right thing. He is doing the right thing. I will make sure that he is taken care of. So when I talk about reform within Peachtree NORML, within the criminal justice system, that is exactly what I'm talking about. 40 minutes, this 20-year-old man, I was driving from my house up here to the meeting, violating the law by talking on the phone, during the hands-free stuff. But that's how passionate I am about making it. I gave him my promise. I gave him my word. I will call the probation officer again tomorrow, leave another voicemail. If she doesn't call me back on Monday, I'll use my contacts in North Georgia and I will get him a place where he can do his hours. He's fallen behind, and he's looking for he's looking at a technical violation. I said, "Are you in arrears? Are you in trouble? Are you in worry? Are you in danger of violating a condition of your probation? He said that his probation officer said you have to have 20 hours when you come see me on the 26th of this month. He's staring down a technical violation and he's doing everything in his power to avoid that. So I'm going to do everything in my power to help him.
Is child support in one of those categories?
As far as like technical violations go, it can't be yet. And if you hold a professional license and you're in arrears of child support, they can pull your license as well. Like if you're a barber, you're a chiropractor, or whatever. If you're regulated by the state, you hold a state license. If you go in arrears on child support, they'll suspend your license.
Just bastard.
Very good news tonight. So that's one of the things that I can't stress enough about what we as an organization are so passionate about. So if you know somebody that runs into these situations, please send them our way. I'm going to help them. I know enough people throughout the state that I can probably get them in touch with somebody who can absolutely put them, send them in the right direction. And I know Chris touched a little bit about harm reduction ordinances and things of that nature, but I'm passionate about that. I'm currently working with the city of Milledgeville to try to get a harm reduction ordinance passed in there. I've sent an open records request to the Gwinnett County Police Department. I've kind of fought tooth and nail with them because they don't participate in uniform crime reporting. So getting their data is a little difficult. Okay? So I know how to read between the lines on some of that stuff based on my background. And so they are padding their numbers in Gwinnett County about their crime rates. So I sent an open records request. I got a response that, hey, you're asking for a lot of information, Mr. Olson. And truth be told, I'm not. All I'm looking for over the past 2 years, how many citations did you issue with the County Police Department for misdemeanor marijuana possession? I was a former system administrator on things like that. I can pull that information up and have it to somebody in 5 to 7 minutes. But it's taken them 3 weeks to get back to me. And there's no telling how much they're going to charge me to get that information. It's fine, we're going to pay it. But I'm trying to get that information sent so I can get back over to the county commissioners because I want them to be armed with facts, right? We're trying to combat all these horrible governmental lies and propaganda over the past 7 or 8 years, and I'm trying to combat that with facts. So, and Dr. Williams is awesome with that. Statistician. I'm probably not pronouncing the word correctly, but it's just something that I've kind of been harping on over the past 4 or 5 months. Is we're going to combat these falsehood facts. And so whenever I send an email out on the bottom, there's a link to cannabis reform facts, right? So it's there. So I try to share that as much as possible. Before I close it out, did I answer everybody's questions, or is any other questions anyone can think of, just in general?
Actually, yes, I know you said that, personally Cardin is the one, I know he's the one who reached out to you on this, but do you ever reach out directly to various county commissions or city councils for anything, like where people have some data or some research that indicates that maybe they would be amenable to these kind of reforms, or do they generally approach you first?
I would say they generally approach us, but I'm proactive in that. So what I typically do, because of my experience, I worked within the criminal justice system for about 17 years. I know the jurisdictions around the state will still hold or carry harsh penalties for misdemeanor marijuana possession. I live in one of those jurisdictions. So I will reach out to a county commissioner, a city council member, county attorney, a city attorney, and say, hey, would you be open to having this discussion? So that's kind of how we get involved in some of these instances. We have citizens that may reach out to me on email via or contact us on our main website. So I get requests for this type of information all the time. So I spend my own personal time researching this and getting this information for them, and we take no credit for it. So if it's just a citizen reaching out to us and say, hey,
can you look over these numbers, or hey, what do you think about us doing this, or hey, could you show us some support, you know, there's a group of us that are trying to enact a harm reduction there. Absolutely. Behind the scenes, I'll give them all the support they want. They want the analysis on the statistics, on the data, I'll get it. They take it to the county commissioners, they take it to their city council meetings, and they combat lies with facts.
Do you know much about what's going on in Hawk County? Or where they stand, or what the attitude is generally, or in Gainesville City?
I don't.
Gainesville's one that had tried and failed a couple years ago, so they might be ready.
And they could be, and I want to say the demographics have shifted. They're a little more favorable to that right now. I knew. Let's say that's probably one of the ones that we're going to reach out to. Really, and just let them know that hey, you're on our radar. Let's talk.
We should dialogue about that.
So let me know. The more the merrier. I'm never going to turn away help, or I'm never going to tell somebody I'm not going to go help. Is there anybody else that have any questions before we kind of turn it over to chat? Anything you can think of that I missed? Laura, Chris? No? Ryan? Ben? Ted?
I kind of have a question, just more about your operations in general. And this is only our second year that we dealt with intent, so we want to get more involved.
Sure.
What communication channels do you have for any events that Peachtree NORML themselves may be involved with, or partnering with, or whatever, or to try to get more people at
So we do.
For events specifically, we use Facebook and the website. So there is an RSS feed if you want to subscribe to the calendar. I would wait a couple of days.
So is
We
it
are
really-
transitioning the whole website right now.
Yeah, it's been and shout out to Laura, because I promise you, over the past 4 months, she's probably spent 70% of her time tooling, and I think her husband helped out as well with this website. And so it's a bit dated, and we're trying to get technologically savvy with how we do things. And so we want to be able to put this information out quickly, and it's something that's easily reachable and easily understandable for our members and then for people who have questions. And so unfortunately, we have not been able to do that as proficiently as what we wanted. And so now that we are transitioning over to
We can aspire to a newsletter.
Yeah, what's
Good
the
long-term plan.
2021 event calendar? What's it looking like?
Okay, so the next big event is, and I'll go ahead and say this, the next big event is going to be at the Atlanta Beer Garden. It's probably going to be in June, early to mid-June.
That would be 420 Edgewood.
420 Edgewood in Atlanta. So it's basically, we're going to have the entire Atlanta Beer Garden, restaurant, bar, and outdoor facilities to ourselves. It's going to be open to Peachtree NORML and to NORML Women of Georgia. I think we're going to partner up with them again. And it's basically going to be a normal throwdown. I mean, we're just going to get everybody together. We're going to have vendors, we're going to have musicians, we're going to have people from CBD industry, and we're going to have just a lot of different folks, and we're going to be able to get out there and network and share and get together, and then hopefully raise a little bit of money for both our organizations, because one of the things that we were initially hoping to do through our I Am Normal campaign and raise the money, and like I said, we have $11,000 in the bank right now, is to give back to those communities. Is to give back to the people who are supporting us, to give back to the areas that are most negatively impacted by prohibition and these just dated laws that some of these municipalities have. And some of these prosecutors are just so hell-bent on putting people in cages for doing nothing more than possessing the weeds of the plant. And so we're trying our best to have events geared around stuff like that, to raise money so we can give back to help those who need that. So if you guys don't have any other questions, and then
I got one little bit. Is there anything off the top of your head technically stopping us from taking volunteers who owe community service and using those volunteers
or organization has the community service hours.
Yep, there's absolutely nothing that can stop. So technically, by law, as a 501c3 nonprofit, we can take on anybody who wants to work with us. Only thing we have to do is just clear it with their probation officer, let them know what we're doing. I know 9 times out of 10 they don't allow teleworking, so they would have to physically do something, and then one of the board members could sign off on their monthly report. So whether it's Laura, Chris, me, Mandy, Erica, something.
Are any of the probation officers giving pushback for normal?
I have not heard. I have not heard of, because whenever I introduce myself, I say we are a criminal justice reform organization. We are a 501c3 nonprofit.
Are they county employees?
I'm sorry? It depends. This particular probation officer, when I'll talk about this young man earlier, is a private probation company, a private for-profit probation company. So these are not mandated police officers with arrest powers. These are civilians who just oversee probations, right? And I use
call
that,
themselves officers.
but they still call themselves officers. And I use that term civilian with a little, like a bad taste in it. Because they don't want you to succeed. It's just been my experience, as point blank as I can say, they do not want you to succeed. They're going to do everything in their power to see fit that they can get a technical violation on you, revoke your probation, revoke your conditional discharge status, revoke whatever you have going for you in a closet, and send you back to jail.
Don't they get like a toaster for everyone?
I don't know if they get a toaster.
Points towards promotion.
But the one time where you see state employees, as far as like probation officers goes, are those who are assigned to a state court or a superior court, and then they're actually part of the Department of Community Supervision. I think that's what they call themselves now, which is one of the biggest employers in the state of Georgia. If not the biggest employer in the state of Georgia, is the Department of Community. They're basically probation officers, and they're state mandated officers with arrest powers that carry guns and all that other good stuff. So I think technically they're the biggest employer in the state of Georgia. They're a Department of Community Supervision. So, but county employees, typically probation officers, not county employees, are either private or they are state employees. If they're a county employee, it's new to me. I'm not familiar with that. Anybody else? Thank you guys so much for coming out. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad Chris is back in business and the operation. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
And cheers for leaving the house.
Yeah. Wax backs ready to party.
There's Chris.